Well, a very good evening to you. You are just in time for the Frontline, the 17th day of October 2017. Well, it is exactly 30 days until Kenyans go to the ballot. The fresh presidential poll will be held on the 17th of October. Only two candidates will be on the ballot paper. That is NASA's flag bearer, Raila Amolo Odinga, as well as the Jubilee's flag bearer, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Well, a lot of political intrigues have shaped the week. We have seen the legislature returning, the 12th parliament opening on Tuesday officially. We've also seen a petition filed at the Judicial Service Commission seeking to have the Chief Justice removed from office. And we've also seen IEBC saying that it is independent, and NASA also saying that it has officially launched a campaign to have some of the officials who committed electoral malpractices at the IEBC removed from office. Well, those are issues that we will be focusing right here on the Frontline tonight. And I will quickly introduce my panelists before we move over to the radio studios where Boni Msambi is on standby. Remember, this program is also broadcast live on radio. But my guests first, joining me in studio, we have our resident analyst, George Kithi, who is on my immediate left. Thank you so much, George, for coming to our studios.
Thank you.
We also have Edwin Sifuna from the NASA coalition. Of course, you remember he was on the ballot paper here in Nairobi vying for the senatorial position, but of course he wasn't successful. But he will be telling us a little bit more of what NASA is up to as we move into the next fresh presidential election. We are also expecting the Murang'a Senator Irungu Kang'ata, who we had invited for this particular show. He says he is a couple of minutes away, but he will be joining us later in this program just to give us insights of what Jubilee is saying as regards the threat by NASA to boycott the polls if indeed there are no reforms within IEBC. Well, you can also get to interact with us, and how can you do that? I now want to cross over to our radio studios where Boni Msambi is on standby. He will be giving you some of the channels which you can be able to communicate with us this evening on the Frontline. Over to you now, Boni.
Boni Msambi. Vile vile unaweza kuwasiliana nami kupitia ujumbe mfupi kwa nambari 22162 ukianza na neno taifa. Nambari za simu 0700176699 0732745111. Naomba nirudie nambari za simu 0700176699 na pia kuna 0732745111. Hizo ni line mbili ambazo ukipiga bila shaka nitakuwa nakuweka hewani kwenye radio na vile vile kwenye TV. Kwako Catherine, kwa mara nyingine tena tuanze mazungumzo rasmi.
Boni Msambi, of course, he's given you some of the channels which you can be able to interact with us here on the Frontline. Let's begin the show, and we will start off with you, of course, Edwin Sifuna, regarding what has happened today. NASA saying that it has now launched a campaign to have IEBC commission, some of the officials at IEBC removed from office. I mean, what is happening?
What is happening is that it is a reaffirmation by the NASA coalition of their intention of seeing ourselves as a country getting to a place where we can actually have elections that pass a test that has been set by the Constitution in terms of the transparency of that particular process, the verifiability of a process, and the integrity of a process. So what is interesting is that people still get surprised when we push for some of these issues. Yet, prior to the August 8th election, we demonstrated that we had every intention of going into an election, but that that particular election had to be an election that Kenyans can actually call free and fair.
Mm-hmm. So what does, this campaign entail? Because the perception out here is when NASA says it has launched a campaign, we expect to see street demonstrations?
I mean, it is bad profiling, especially by media, and I don't know why you agitating for reforms within an independent organization should draw parallels with the street protests and battles. I mean, we have proposed things that don't require people to protest to happen. For instance, when we are saying we want to see somebody else printing the ballot papers because of the mess we saw with the current, printer of ballot papers, Al Ghurair, that does not require anyone to protest in the streets. When we say saffron more for the people who provided the equipment that was bypassed by these crooks who are in IBC, we would like another farm to be given an opportunity to do to provide the technology for our elections so that we can have an opportunity to have free and fair elections. That does not mean you are calling for violence. I mean, when you say that the people who are responsible for the mess that we are in within the IBC should step aside so that we have Kenyans of integrity to run the repeat election, I mean, that is not calling for protests. It is saying that people need to do what is right by law.
From a legal point of view, George, do you think this campaign is headed anywhere?
Well, yes, strictly from a legal point of view, we have challenges. And in fact, even from a political point of view, we still have challenges. The challenges will be that we're in this situation because the fact that one is a constitutional requirement that we repeat within a certain constricted and restrained time frame. Number two is that time frame is constitutionally provided. And then number three, this order or the repeat is not out of anywhere just because an order of court was given. Now, an order of court must be implemented in any way, howsoever it must be implemented. The implementation of that order means that if you don't do it by way of an act that you do, that is not in compliance with the order of court, or otherwise you omit to do certain things you're supposed to do, you risk offending the order, and therefore there are very many ramifications that are called upon once you do that.
But the argument, I mean, would be the final judgment by the court isn't out yet, aren't they? Jumping the gun.
Yes, I was coming to that. I think NASA is in the campaign mode. Strictly speaking, I think the tone of the campaign towards the election, either on 17th or whatever other time we'll have it, has turned. What they're doing is they're cleverly emotionalizing and galvanizing the support in a clarion call that is a victim call. And because of that, it's very easy for their supporters to resonate with it, because all through and consistently and persistently and even insistently, they've shown that they've been victims of a regime, they've been victims of institution. Otherwise, the win is theirs. And that's political packaging, if you ask me. I do know it's very clever. Of course, on the face of it, it means well, but again, it is conjoined and inseparable with the politics of the day. Most importantly, also, we must look at it this way. When an order of court has been given and the time frame has been given, when you talk of an independent institution, of course, on paper, IEBC is independent to the extent that it's insulated with all manner of laws that gives it that independence.
That independence, yes.
However, there are players who are human beings. The actors are also human beings, and they also have opinions, and they be opinions. The decisions they make every day, those are decisions that are human-based, even in that insulation of independence. So you realize that mistakes will always happen, as has happened now. So how do we then deal with that issue? I think that's the calling and the questions that have been raised by the opposition. And then how do we deal with it? Because remember, if something has to be fixed, IBC in its own internal mechanism can fix it, but sometimes IBC may want to fix it because there's a government that can make it fixed, because some of these issues may either be fixed internally by IBC, or the framework has to be provided for instance, financing or otherwise by the government of the day.
But now, if IBC listens to the calls by NASA to have some of its officials step aside or even sacked, won't it be perceived to be bowing to pressure from outside? Yet they're an independent body; they should make their own decisions.
It's one of the interesting things that I picked up there. When you ask the question, are we not jumping the gun by asking these people to step aside and yet
before the final judgment?
But you see, that is misconceiving the entire idea, because you see, if you know the law, what the law says and what the standard is in terms of what a free and fair election is, and you know that the Supreme Court pronounced itself on part, I mean, they gave us a glimpse of what the reason was that they overturned this particular election. They said there were irregularities and illegalities that were committed that were sufficient for them to declare that that election could not have passed the test of a free and fair election. That is all you need, and the knowledge of what the law is. So, for instance, if you know that irregularities and illegalities were committed. And by the way, when you talk about these court orders, I was part of a team that was supposed to audit the technology at IEBC. And despite the fact that the Supreme Court gave a very specific order for them to allow access to their database so that we can actually do the audit, they refused to comply with that order. So they cannot even speak about court orders to us. Number two, disobedience of a court order is a punishable offense in this country. So
are you saying that IBC has refused to act in your perception?
That's what I'm saying. Even the Chief Justice himself, you remember when we went back at around 11 to tell them that we have been unable to be granted the access that you ordered. And they said that there will be consequences for people who do not obey the court order. As we speak today, even that court order, they have not even purged that contempt, because we have never been granted the access. They refused to give us, for instance, the GPS locations of a key skit, and there was an express order. So the people who are guilty of contempt, because there's somebody who's responsible for obedience of court orders.
But you know, NASA has outlined, you know, the people that it wants to be removed from IBC. Where are you getting that list from? Because I thought this should be.
This is the point that I was making.
Yes.
I'm saying, when there is an order directed at Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, there are people who are responsible for ensuring that that order is complied with. The order for us to be able to access the ICT is directed at the CEO, who's the head of the secretariat. It's directed at people like Muhati, who's the head of the ICT. We sat with Muhati in that room, and he was telling us at 4:45, 15 minutes before the deadline of the Supreme Court, that even he himself is unable to access the database for IEBC. These criminals called Safran Mofo, we could see that they are the ones who actually are a stumbling block to the execution of this court order. I mean, so when we say that Mohati has to go, we are drawing directly from what we had at the Supreme Court, the decision of the Supreme Court, the fact that the order was not complied with, and he was the head of the ICT.
George, I mean,
CEO.
What do you make of the list that, you know, NASA is bringing out of the individual?
Whereas it's an arguable issue, I do think, yes, it makes political sense that way. But my issue, again, purely, and this is a puristic approach to law. I do think that we need to get the sum total of what the Supreme Court is going to say in the full text of the judgment. The reason for that is then we are able to foresee whether that complements what NASA is saying, and that could be much more than what they're saying, or it could be much less. Or, in the alternative, it could be glaring mistakes that are excusable from the text of the law. So then, once we have that, and complying with the same constitution on people's right to be heard, fair treatment, and all that, I think then it's possible. You see, the problem is, we may victimize people, then the court realizes in its investigation, because it has a proper time now to interrogate all the documents and information it has, we realize that the people who are responsible are not the ones that have been named, and the perception we got out of the proceedings is not the same as the outcome. And then we realize that we're victimizing certain people, otherwise the ones that are real culprits are in fact other people. You realize then that you need to shift from what you're saying about these people with the argument that they've gone through, and then you have now to attack other people. So I do think
maybe IBC is playing the wait and see game. They're waiting to see the final judgment before they take action on any particular officer.
It's not just IBC. I think all of us, even NASA and Jubilee themselves, would want to see the final judgment just to know the act. Because, you see, we may be approaching the next election, yet there's so many things that we need to deal with. Or we may be going for the next election when we know the platform available is in readiness for the next election. I think then what the judges should, and this is the complaint we've had with the judges, that as much as possible, they should give the judgment as early as possible and the content. Because, you see, the fact that they have a further 21 days does not mean we have to do the entire lapse of 21 days for us to get the entire judgment. The debate we'll be having now will not be this one. We'll be moving into what then needs to be done and what is the way forward for the elections and for this country.
I mean, based on what you're saying, that we don't need to wait for the 21 days, and this is what we saw also happening in 2013. The judges, giving the order, then the judgment came back later. Are we then saying that the constitutional timelines that we gave to listen to a presidential petition are not adequate for judges to come up with something comprehensive?
True, because in fact, if you saw NASA, the agony they had to go through in preparation of the documentation, if you saw Jubilee, in the agony they had to go through in preparation of their documentation to reply to what NASA said. Either it was not enough to reply to them, either NASA again had more to say they did not say. You see, at the range of which, at the expense of time, we can't have adequate justice. And then even the judges themselves, when we tell them within 7 days they have to provide the following things, or 14 days, it is an impossibility, humanly impossible. I thought that's what, in fact, Justice Murang'a, the Chief Justice himself said, that we've done what is humanly possible, but we can't. Meaning it is a protest statement that in the environment that they're operating, probably reforms need to be adequately invited as to expand the time from within which that exercise can be done. Mr. Sifuna and myself will tell you that at times a person misses on very important points before court on account of time, because probably you have only 2 hours to prepare this, or 3 hours. This is something that involves all polling stations in the entire country. Probably the complaints they didn't file, probably the responses that were unavailable, and therefore justice is muted to that extent.
You know, whenever I hear this issue of reform so that we expand the time for hearing petitions, it is quite a tragedy for this country, because
you don't think
when we proposed, you know, Kenyans forget very fast. The Code Coalition actually had a draft bill under the Okoa Kenya auspices. And one of the proposals in there was the expansion of the time, because we realized in 2013 we had gone through this thing. This is something that everybody agrees upon. The judges agree that we need to expand the time. And in fact, when one of the senators actually brought it up with the Supreme Court, he was told that even the judiciary made presentations to your joint committee that we needed to expand this time so that we can be able to...
so how much time are you talking about in your proposal?
We had proposed 30 days to hear the petition. And, you know...
Isn't that a long time to keep, you know, based on the political climate?
Look at what we are experiencing now. We are still going on as a country. We are waiting for another elections. It will be another 90 days from the time that we voted last until the next time that we vote. I mean, this argument that somehow the reasons for the judgment are not known just because the detailed judgment have not been given is a fallacy. The time that the judges need is to explain themselves. They already have an appreciation of the case. They have an appreciation of the facts. They have looked at the evidence. It is just that they need to prepare all those thoughts and put them down in a document that you can read. It's not that they are making the decision now. They are not looking at evidence now. That matter was closed. So all that we are waiting for is a detailed judgment. The judgment is already out there. We can tell, for instance, you know, I mean, it's just people being pretentious. You can tell why the decision of the court went the way that it did. That in fact the threshold for the presidential election is not the same as the threshold of all these other cases. The arguments against Section 83 were made very clearly in open court, and everybody followed it. So we know the people who are capable. If your one job is to make sure that a ship does not sink, and it sinks, you as a captain, surely, even from a moral perspective.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
So if it is your job, IEBC exists solely for one thing and one thing only, to deliver free, fair, and credible elections. So when the highest court in the land says you did not, and that in fact there were unlawful acts and irregularities, you need to step aside.
George, you seem to differ with him.
Yes. Whereas I agree with him, I do think that the very detailed text of the judgment is not exactly how we are politicking it. Because see, the packaging of politics is very different from legal packaging. And the accusations that then stem out of the text of that judgment may not be necessarily what we're hearing. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, there's a judgment. From a legal perspective, we know the basic and obvious principles that come out as to why the judgment was given in the manner that it was. However, there are certain pointers as to who was culpable. And we do think generally that there are those that will obviously be culpable on account of what we think could have been upheld by the judge. For instance, in terms of the depletion of the forms, the change of the forms, who was responsible and how? It may be a clerk.
It could be a returning officer.
It may be a returning officer. Yeah. It may be all the way up. And number two is what happens to the sum total of the evidence that they have seen. There could be further details that will call us upon to look at this issue more detailed than we are looking at now. So my position still remains is that we are not going to it's not fair to push a reformist approach on account of the political inclination. It will be to push a reformist approach on account of what is good for this country. Meaning that it should be actual, it must be constructive, it must be from what the court has said.
Let's talk about, the gist of the reforms that you're talking about. What is it that you want to achieve from this particular campaign in terms of the issues?
There are very specific issues. We are saying that there needs to be a full audit of the technology that was used. And that it cannot be the same audit that this firm have done on themselves and given themselves a clean bill of health. If that equipment is going to be susceptible to interference again in these repeat elections.
So who are you proposing to do the audit?
That's what I'm saying. We need an audit. We have not yet gotten to who, but we need to agree as a country that we need an audit to satisfy ourselves that if this service provider really is a provider who we can rely on to provide us with technology that is not susceptible to interference from outside. Are we going to have a free and fair election if we use the same suppliers? That is the question that we want to ask Kenyans. And from where we sit, and given the pronouncements that we had from the court, whether you wait for the detailed judgment or not, we know that these people cannot be trusted to conduct an election, a free and fair election.
I mean, what issue do you have with the supplier? Because he merely gave the papers to IBC.
This is what I'm saying. You as a supplier have a responsibility to the entity that you're supplying to, that you should be able to provide, the material that is desired that will actually do the job that is fit for the job. If you are
so is there evidence showing that they did not provide what they were supposed to?
This is what we are saying. We have been saying from the start that the integrity of the material cannot be guaranteed with some of these firms because of their local relationships here in this country. That's all we have been saying. So that you would be able to allow firms bandia to find their ways into the system, yet you as a supplier know that this is a project or something that you need to take extremely seriously for the good of the country. If the KM's kit, for instance, it is very easy for you to turn off the GPRS location so that somebody can start feeding in results from someplace else, then we probably should look. Every change in this society comes as a result of us trying to fix a certain mischief. And if the mischief has been identified in these elections, then we need to do something about it. Number two, if we know that the people who are responsible for delivering the credible election have actually been unsuccessful in doing so, what new capacity is Mohati, for instance, going to come up with in the period between now and the election for us to be able to trust him with the job? What new capacity, what new insights will somebody like Chiloba, who even today has, essentially hid his head in the sand and is refusing to acknowledge that the election has already been declared as having been invalid because it was not free and fair. He still goes on media and national media and claims that this is the best run election ever in this country. I mean, it's ridiculous. So in the face of such obstinance, somebody who cannot even see facts that have been presented before him, how do you insist on such a person conducting the election? It would be better for us if he was acknowledging the mistakes that they made, the fact that they actually have been found out as having conspired to steal an election, and they step aside and allow Kenyans of integrity to be able to conduct the election.
Okay, we'll continue taking a look at that, but I want us to quickly cross over to Boni Musambi, who is on the radio side, just to get some feedback from the public. But of course, remember, I'd indicated to you that we have also invited the Murang'a Senator, is also the Deputy Majority Leader in the Senate, Honorable Irungu Kang'ata, who will be joining us after this. But now let me take it over to Boni Musambi to get feedback from the public as we usher in Honorable Kang'ata into studio.
Asante Catherine Achieng'a, bila shaka naendelea kufuatilia mjadala huo hapo katika studio yetu ya Runinga, na msikilizaji, kama unafuatilia kwa makini utagundua kwamba leo tungependa tu kuangazia jinsi IEBC inavyoendelea kujiandaa kwa ajili ya uchaguzi mkuu ambao unafaa kufanyika tarehe 17 mwezi ujao. Tunasikia malalamishi sana kutoka kwa wakili Sifuna hapo. Tumesikia pia maoni ya mchanganuzi wa masuala ya kisiasa ambaye ni Kithi. Sasa tunataka maoni yako. Wewe hapo ulipo, je, unadhani IEBC inaonekana kufanya vya kutosha kujiandaa kwa ajili ya uchaguzi wa tarehe 17 mwezi ujao? Kwa mara nyingine tena, je, unadhani IEBC inaendelea kufanya kazi ya kutosha kujiandaa kwa ajili ya uchaguzi mkuu wa urais marudio ya tarehe 17 mwezi ujao? Sema nami sasa kupitia 0700176699 na pia kuna 0732745111. Pia nitakuwa naangalia tweets zako at KBC Channel 1, at KBC Radio Taifa na at Boni Musambi, na pia SMS kwa 22162 ukianza na neno Taifa. Moja kwa moja kwenye maoni yako. Habari yako?
Nzuri sana Boni Musambi.
Yes, Dominic Mudhama.
Dominic Mudhama. Boni Musambi.
Yes.
Kwa upande wangu naona wako tayari. Kwa sababu nikani Boni Musambi. Wale waliotajwa na hivi nilihusika na hii nini uchaguzi. Wana wanaendelea kukwamilia kwa siku. Kwanza wakae kando. Maana hatuna imani nao kama wataendelea kwa hivyo tu.
Dominic,
Mboni,
uamuzi kamili wa mahakama ya juu haujatolewa, unatarajiwa kutolewa siku ya Alhamisi ndio ijulikane ni nani haswa alikuwa na makosa.
Nakubaliana wewe Mboni. Lakini kwanza wakae kama wametajwa. Wakae kando, kama hawana makosa wataendelea kazi baadaye.
Aha, asante kwa maoni yako. Habari yako?
Mzuri sana.
Unaongea na nani? Pole sana kwa kupoteza line hiyo. Hello Radio Taifa.
Habari yako?
Salama sana ndugu yangu.
Naona Patrick na Mungu kutoka Chaki.
Maoni yako ni yapi?
Hawa itakuwa ready, yakaa ready. Naona kama hawajakaa ready.
Kwa hivyo kwa nini unaona IEBC haiko tayari? Aha, ningependa msikilizaji na mtazamaji, tunapozungumzia swala hili la IEBC kujiandaa, tuzungumze kwa uwazi. Tusiseme tu hawako tayari na hatujui hawako tayari kivipi. Tusiseme wako tayari na hatujui wako tayari kivipi. Wacha tusikie simu mbili za mwisho. Hello Radio Taifa. Radio Taifa, naongea na nani?
Hello, Mr. Boni.
Yes.
Habari ya studio ndugu yangu.
Salama sana.
Hii ni sauti ya Joseph Atabuni kwa hapa Njoro kwa ndege.
Karibu sana ndugu yangu.
Nimekaribia. Mimi naona IEBC nafikiri imejiandaa sasa tusichukulia makosa sana, kwa sababu vile wametangaza tarehe 17 waendelee tu na mipango yao. Mimi sioni makosa kama iko hapa. Ndio Atabuni kwa hapa Njoro kwa ndege tena.
Asante. Hello Radio Taifa. Radio Taifa.
Boni Musambi.
Ndio.
Fotokopi ya mzee ndio ameingia.
Shabiki mkubwa sana wa kipindi cha Zinga, karibu sana.
Jono mita na mimi nakutazama kabisa vile umejaza mwili. Sasa Boni Musambi. Takuuzi wa Kenya, karibu Kenya nzima. Ni kumuona Ezra Jiloba. Akizungumza kwenye TV fulani na kusema kwamba uchaguzi ulikuwa wa kweli kabisa na hakuna uchaguzi ambao umeifanyika Kenya hii kama ambao ulipita. Hii ni jambo ambalo inaudhi. Maana kama mahakama ilisema kwamba uchaguzi ulikuwa mbovu, Boni Musambi, iwaje huyu jamaa anazidi kujigamba tena kuongea vitu ambavyo vinakera na vinaumiza roho za Wakenya. Kwa hivyo hawa jamaa Boni Musambi ya rais wanapatikana wao wamefurushwa ofisini. Mbona wasuruhusu UN isimamie kura hapa Kenya bwana? Alafu kila mtu mwenye atashinda Boni Musambi aridhike kwamba uchaguzi umefanyika kwa haki na ukweli, kuliko Ezra Jiloba azidi tu kujigamba na bila anajigamba na watu wa Kenya. Boni Musambi,
John Omito, nadhani kwamba wako tayari kutekeleza uchaguzi mwingine marudio.
Boni Musambi, tunataka hii uchaguzi uahirishwe mpaka Januari. Hii watu waende mpaka Januari wajipange vizuri.
Haya, nimekusikia John Omito. Kuna wale wanahisi IEBC iko tayari, kuna wengine wanahisi kwamba hakuna kitu kinaendelea. Kuna mchanganyo pale. Tukirudi tutaendelea kuchanganua masuala haya, na kama ulivyoona katika upande wa runinga ni kwamba kuna mgeni mwingine ambaye amejiunga nasi ambaye ni Senator wa Murang'a Irungu Kang'ata. Atakuwa akitoa maoni yake, lakini baada ya mapumziko mafupi. Unatazama kipindi cha The Frontline kupitia KBC Channel 1 na kukisikiliza kupitia hapa KBC Radio Taifa, kikiongozwa na Catherine Achieng'a nami Boni Musambi. Tunapumzika kidogo tu, tukirejea tutaendelea. Sauti ya
Welcome back. You are watching Frontline. I want to officially welcome our our new guest, that is the Member of Parliament for Murang'a County, who is also the Deputy Majority Whip in the Senate, Honorable Irungu Kang'ata, who has now joined us. Remember, we are also talking to Edwin Sifuna from the NASA Coalition, as well as George Kithi, who is our resident analyst. And I want to quickly rope you into this discussion. Just before you came in, we were looking at, the campaign that NASA has now launched for electoral reforms. I mean, as Jubilee, what is your view of this?
First and foremost, we want elections to be held on 17th October 2017 without any delay. We know as per the Constitution, you must have elections on or before 2nd of November 2017. And therefore, the demands by NASA are unreasonable and also illegal, to the sense that they want to interfere with the workings of an independent body as per the Constitution. And again, also, they need to know that there was a court order. It had several limbs. One of the limbs was that IBC must conduct the new elections. And IBC means the commissioners, and also I would imagine the people under that commission who have been employed by that commission. When you have a situation where one player is busy campaigning, our Jubilee coalition is busy campaigning, but when you look at NASA, they rarely go to campaign. They are always held up here in Nairobi. It seems then you have a situation where one party clearly will be defeated, but that party most likely will blame on other things instead of blaming itself for failing to do the right thing, that is to campaign. Are you concerned,
that by what, the court pointed out that IBC did not do its job in some areas? I mean, do you feel as Jubilee that there is nothing in terms of reforms that are needed at IBC based on, the court ruling and the issues that the court pointed out?
First and foremost, we do not have the long judgment, so you cannot even know where did IBC specifically violated the law. For now, you can only talk of generalities. So therefore, we have to await the Tuesday final judgment so that we can know for real where did IBC go wrong. Number two, you cannot be able to effect radical changes now unless you don't want to do an election. Some of those changes may require legal changes in Parliament. That may take time. And again, there is already a boycott from NASA side. And again, if you now start having new people to come in and conduct elections, which are only 30 days ago, that may take time. So therefore, the so-called changes that you are alluding to are impossible between now and the date of elections. In any event, we must also take into account the current IBC came as a result of pressure that was applied by NASA people. So they cannot have their cake and eat it. That may be very unfair.
To be fair, let me just respond to a few things that Mheshimiwa has raised. Number one, NASA is holding rallies. Even today, I came here straight from a rally at Jamhuri in Embakasi East, Jacaranda in Embakasi East. Number two, you cannot claim the protection of the same law that you have been found to be broken. You cannot claim you want the protection of the independence of a commission when you yourself have allowed yourself to be influenced by outside forces. We have seen stories of people from Saffron, people who are not allowed to have any space within the ICT of IBC, logging in, doing things on the server. At what point does that independence end? So you cannot come and say the independence of a commission now. Number three, the commission is the commissioners. This is an argument we've made from way back when we wanted to kick out the previous team. The commission is the commissioners. There is no law that says IEBC is Ezra Chiloba. Ezra Chiloba came to this commission, he found it in existence. He will leave the commission will be in existence. What we are saying is this.
He has raised a valid point in terms of some of these reforms that you're proposing would require Parliament. I mean, how are you going to go around that?
Like what? What would require Parliament? For Mohati, the ICT director, to leave? He's an employee like a sweeper at IEBC.
The commissioners that NASA has proposed should leave office.
That's what we are saying. The commission will be properly constituted even without two commissioners. I mean, that is something that everybody knows. What we are saying is this. We are asking the question, if these people, this same team that we're talking about, has been unable to conduct free and fair elections, why would we trust them again with the same exercise.
Can I reply
Let
to
me
that?
just finish. Which new skills has Chiloba acquired that will now make him deliver free and credible election? Which is this new appreciation of the law that this director of ICT, Muhati, has found when he is still in contempt of a court order, even today as we speak here? So this is not somebody, we would rather have somebody new who will learn the job quickly and do, than somebody who's a proven breaker of the law running the election.
Let me weigh in. Let me weigh in this way. Before you come in, let me just give the anatomy of the law as it is now towards the claim for reforms and, of course, the grandstanding on the other side. We do have a judgment of a court. That judgment of a court ordered IEBC to conduct elections within 60 days. Those 60 days are also provided for in the Constitution, so that then what the Supreme Court pronounced is a term that has already specifically been provided for in the Constitution. You see, the advantage we had in the August elections was that the day is set by the Constitution. The 60 days are not set by the Constitution. It is the term within which the election should be conducted, but a date within that period of time has not been set. That's one thing that we must probably agree with now. The other issue is, which then brings probably the complication, is that whereas that is the correct position, that 60-day is pursuant, because it's pursuant to an order of a court, you can't extend it by going to court to allow for more liberty. You can, because the court's hands are tied. Now, assuming we use Parliament, even if we had that provision of that Parliament to reform that, being the most minimum, to extend that period of time, because one or two things need to be done, so that probably...
But does Parliament have that latitude?
One is whether, I do not think, because it is reforming a term of a president, so I do not think it has that latitude, but even if it had, for academic purposes, if you extend that period of time, you cannot now have the court be influenced by a new law, because it's already, like he's put it, the court is, I'll call it functus officio, the extent that it is already made a determination. So right now, actually we're going to just read what they said, but the determination is out there.
So we are talking about 30 days now.
So even if we reform the term, or whatever reforms we have, we cannot go back to court and there's the judgment and they say, okay, we want to set aside the pronouncement of the court on the following issues because we have a new law. Because a law will never be retrospective. It can't be retroactive.
Going forward.
So it must be enacted and move forward, and not backwards. And yet, moving forward, the judgment of the court is a follow-through. It must be implemented. And anything done outside that judgment of court becomes unconstitutional, obviously because it's a backup of that judgment of the Constitution. Now, the only remedy is obviously that there's no Constitution. Because if there's a Constitution, you are confined to it. So if there's no Constitution, then you have liberties. So either way, we must have an election in 60 days. However, there's then the demand for the election. So that accommodation environment is where we are now.
Yes, two issues. Number one.
And I'd like you to look straight into the camera.
Yes, two issues. Two issues to reply to the submissions made by my brother. One, this is not the first time we have a court nullifying a certain election. We have seen in several instances where an MCA, a member of parliament, a governor, a senator has lost his seat via a court order. We cannot be having such scenarios where once an election is nullified, then you force out a commissioner, you force out an official of IBC. There is no, from where I sit, a presidential nullification, strictly speaking, is just like a governor nullification. So this idea where they want to put Raila Odinga as a very superior maybe candidate, then to me that is very superfluous.
But isn't it, I mean, being the fact that this is the first time a Kenyan court is nullifying a presidential election?
So be it. The point is, if you allow that once you nullify an election, you kick out some certain IBC official, then one can as well argue, yes, I'm an MCA, I've been able to obtain a court order nullifying this election, I also want this and this official to go home. Number two, to the best of my knowledge, there is what we call a project team that has been established by the chairman of IBC. That so-called project team is the one that is going to conduct the new elections. That project team does not have the people this guy is complaining about. And by the way, we have a problem with that system, because it appears like the chairman acceded to demands from NASA, whereas he is supposed to execute his duty in an independent and free manner. But be that as it may, to the best of my knowledge, that so-called new team doesn't have these people who he's complaining about. However, and therefore, I would imagine all his demands have been taken care of, but that's neither here or there. The bottom line is there is a court order. That court order had nothing to do with IBC officials. To me, this is just a decoy for them to get a justification for not to come for the main election because they are going to lose terribly.
Is NASA precipitating a crisis based on what he's saying?
Let me just make a small distinction, Mheshimiwa, because you know, the argument you want to make is a bit of an oversimplification. Whenever an election is annulled, the court usually apportions blame. And it is out of that apportionment of blame that we discover or we decide what is it that we are going to take in terms of remedial steps for us to avoid the same mistakes. In this particular nullification, as opposed to the other nullifications that he's talking about, blame was apportioned, and it was apportioned on the electoral body itself.
But he's also pointed out that the new team
that's
does
what I'm
not
saying. So it's not something that you can say that every time an election is annulled, because for the MCAs you'll hear there was violence and it was apportioned to the opponent who won, or there was bribery and so on and so forth. On this particular instance, the blame was apportioned to IEBC. And the court was specific to say there were irregularities and illegalities committed within the commission by people in the commission that annulled the entire exercise. That's what we are saying. We need to remove these bad apples. And you see, the doomsday scenario that my brother here is portending. I mean, this is an argument like you would rather lose your head than lose an appendix. Would you rather, if there is a problem with somebody, this is exactly what you're saying. I mean, that we even start contemplating the absence of a constitution just because we don't want to send Mohati home. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous.
But, you know, he's also raised a valid point that IBC came up with a new team that does not have the...
And what happened?
The people
because of pressure from a non-quarters, in fact, the CEO has been made, has been put in charge of that same team. Because from the memorandum that was sent to Chiloba by the chairman, you could see that the thinking of the commission was that we need to have a separate team other than the people who ran this election. Now we are hearing all sorts of very worrying reports. Even today in the papers, we have a commissioner saying she has actually been threatened, her family has been threatened, they have had to move out of the country, and yet we want to say that this is the same. We are ready to go for an election on 17th. All we are saying is if we cannot satisfy ourselves as a country that that election is going to be free and fair, then there is absolutely no point of putting the country through this process.
Maybe the best thing to do would be to break down what are these calls for reforms. And as I hear is...
He talks about an audit of the system.
Getting another supplier for the ballot papers and getting rid of the people who schemed to subvert the will of the people.
You see, the problem we'll have is that getting rid of people has two sides, because there's a two-tier approach to this employment at IEBC. One is the commissioners which you put there, and they symbolize the independence on account of the fact we've been insulated on how then they can leave office. Then there's the secretariat. For the secretariat, I do think that's something we can deal with. Honestly, as a country, for honest to ourselves, that's something we can deal with, as has been proposed. Yes, these are government institutions either way, and elements of secondment, element of reorganizing and redeployment can be done. That can be done. If you can't...
If I could borrow his argument, allow me, gentlemen, if I could borrow, his argument, what he's saying, if a judge makes a decision and says, this election has been nullified, let us go back to the poll. I don't see it happening that, IBC commissioners are always told to walk out, because we've also seen the same happening on the Jubilee side.
I've explained the issue of apportionment of blame.
Give me a moment to make my point. We've also seen Jubilee saying that Murang'a made a decision, and they're also now, we've seen a petition being presented by the Nyeri Member of Parliament to JSC seeking to have Murang'a investigated for, making his decision. So don't you think both sides are also playing politics with this?
My colleague is talking about the apportionment of blame. Yes, even assuming that blame was apportioned to the IBC.
It was.
Fine. But you see, it was not on an individual. You cannot say so-and-so takes this certain percentage of blame, so therefore it should go. It was to the entire institution, unless they want to cannibalize the entire institution so that we have another body which does not exist in law, conduct the elections. But this idea of nitpicking, saying you Chiloba, you who, is very unfair. Because when you look at that verdict...
But is in Jubilee.
No, look here.
In the same with CJ.
No, that verdict did not mention any person. To reply to the issue of the petition against the CJ, that was not the position of Jubilee. In fact, we strongly believe that member of parliament is a mole of NASA. He's working at the base of these guys. That is why he was told by the president to withdraw that motion. It is not something that was supported by the party. But going back to this issue, don't blame any official if at all the judgment did not specifically say you and you are the one who bear the biggest burden for this matter. But to me, the greatest problem with this approach is the jurisprudence that was set by the Supreme Court. Because these are jurisprudence where they want to have their cake and eat it. Already the court has said, yes, there are breaches of law. Already the court has already given them an order, we have a new election. And then they proceed now to say, start punishing specific officials. That's very unfair to those people. Remember, by the way, there is cost implication. Why is it that they don't care how much the government is going to use to do a new election? Now you want to force out a commissioner. And a commissioner goes home, what happens? You pay him the remainder of his term. That's millions of money. You pay him for work not done. They don't care. That money can be used to build hospitals in Karachuonyo. They don't care. That money can be used to build roads in Muhaya constituency. He doesn't care about that. But because they want to satisfy their ego, they are ready to pay millions of shillings to kick out 1 or 2 officials or 5 officials just to satisfy their ego.
Let me ask this. What is the debate between NASA and Jubilee anyway? It's very simple. Jubilee's position has been and still is that you see those ballot papers are there. There's no question of credibility as to the ballot papers themselves. You can vote there and the ballot papers will be in that box. Somehow, somewhat, they'll be in there. So NASA's argument is, fine, the ballot papers are in that ballot box. So how do we manage them towards a result, the conversion aspect from where it is into a result? That's what we're arguing about. Isn't it time then we overhaul everything and move into counting our own ballot papers and pronounce who the winner is? Because that seems where the problem is. We've introduced something called, IT. It seems to have a Frenchman involved. It seems to have a problem. We've introduced all these things. Yet me and all these gentlemen here and yourself, we have our ballot papers somewhat stuck somewhere. And we still have them on that day anyway. So is it the management of the electoral system on things we introduced that then have been taken over by people who are mismanaging them? Meaning we are then debating on third parties' portfolio and work, whereas our pronouncement as to whether Raila is a winner, Uhuru Kenyatta is a winner, is somewhere out there in a ballot.
First of all, there is no guarantee at all, Wakili, that those ballot papers are in the ballot boxes, because this commission does not respect the law. They operate outside the law. You saw a commissioner, the guy in charge of Nairobi, breaking into a ballot box here in Nairobi. I mean, it was all over the news. When the law is very clear that you can only open that ballot box once sealed with a court order. Number two, we have said, and I will keep saying, there is a court order to allow access to the databases, which they refuse to comply with. So these are not people who can even claim protection of the law. But, at the end of the day, I want to speak to this so-called petition by Ngunjiri Wambugu. First of all, Ngunjiri Wambugu can never be NASA's mole. And it demonstrates 2 things that are very tragic. Number one, that there is absolutely no independence of the office of a member of parliament in this country. That he is saying that the only way Ngunjiri Wambugu could have done that is so that is if he had been sent by NASA. And he was stood up in a crowd by the president like a little kid and told to withdraw it. Because if you are a member of parliament on Jubilee, it's like you do not have freedom of conscience, or you cannot originate ideas on your own. That's what I'm wondering. So how is it possible? He said himself, no, I'm just asking. I cannot hold Ngunjiri's brief. And he said that the position, the petition did not have the support of the party. As if as a member of parliament, in parliament, you cannot have your own ideas. And this is the biggest tragedy, because what they have done is essentially kill the independence of parliament. Parliament as an institution does not exist. Number two, we do
What do you say about the process in NASA MPs?
let me just finalize my point.
Yes.
I have a theory on what that petition was supposed to achieve, because if you look at the petition, it was so badly drafted. There were absolutely no grounds that could merit the removal of a Chief Justice, so that any reasonable lawyer or any reasonable person would conclude that the purpose of the petition was not for the removal of the Chief Justice. I postulate, because we have seen this happen every single time and on every single issue, that they want to push us and the conversation in this country to a point where you talk the way that you did. That you can ask the question that, are you not seeing the same thing happening on both sides? It's the same thing with hate speech. That if my brother here utters any words that could amount to hate speech here on this show, it will take 2 weeks as they wait for Sifuna from NASA to say something nearly resembling hate speech so that they can arrest us together and say that there's hate speech on both sides. It is absolutely ridiculous that now we are being told, oh, there are attacks on independent institutions from both sides.
But isn't that factual?
It's not factual, that's what I'm telling you. It is so that you push the conversation away from the real culprits. The people who are attacking an institution, a constitutional institution like the judiciary. When a president can stand up in public and insult a judge, the leader's majority, Aden Duale, is famous for it. He picks out individual judges, and he goes even after their own families. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you will wait, and then you will say, oh, but there is attacks on institutions from both sides. Now NASA is attacking the independence. We are not attacking the independence of the IEBC. Again, the question we will ask ourselves as Kenyans, are the people who are responsible for the mess that we are in really the people we need to trust with a fresh exercise? That's all we are asking.
What is your comment on that?
Well, the last time I checked, Raila Odinga commenting about judiciary was when he was insulting judiciary by saying that judiciary is not an independent entity in Kenya, that indeed he is filing his petition with a view of wanting judiciary to vindicate itself by giving a ruling or a judgment which favors him. So this is a turnaround, a political turnaround. After he has been able to maneuver and obtain a judgment in his favor, he is now masquerading as the greatest defender of the independence of judiciary. But we know his terms, how he has been describing judiciary, and therefore we cannot trust him as a person who can speak on behalf of the judiciary. Number two, this idea that a member of parliament has the right to do as he wishes, we must always take into account the Political Parties Act, which is very clear that you must follow the dictates of the party. That is why you are voted into a certain party. You have the liberty to vie as an independent if you do not want to follow the ideology of a political party. And if you fail to follow that party, we have the power to whip you and force you to go for a by-election. So therefore, what the president did was within the law. It is allowable under Political Parties Act, and therefore I would urge that member of parliament to withdraw that petition. But you have seen the zeal within which my friend Sifuna here is holding the brief of my friend from Nyeri. That tells you that indeed there's every likelihood that person was not acting alone. He must have been sent by my colleague here to go and start bringing those issues diversionary so that we lose the Kithi vote. But I can tell you that we are not going to lose that vote because we have been able to illustrate that person was not acting independently. But as to the attacks, as to what my brother, my senior president said concerning judiciary, I can tell you it's a very painful exercise. You go campaigning, you use a lot of resources, you mobilize people, they vote for you, and then the court snatches your victory. And by the way, the court was very clear. It said that President Uhuru had done nothing wrong. Yes. Surely, and then they take away your victory. I can tell you, the most painful thing is that the jurisprudence that has been set out by the Supreme Court is so dangerous. I foresee, by the way, going forward, people masquerading. You send your friend to go and start doing work with IBC. You fail to sign a certain form. You fail to stamp a certain form.
But
then it becomes
based on what you've just pointed out, the court saying that President Uhuru Kang'ata had no liability. Wouldn't you want then as Jubilee to make sure that IBC, actually does this proper? Because if it wasn't for them, then the president would have, been declared president, as, you say was the case.
Yes, we want that. By the way, we want IBC to conduct the election to the best.
So are you willing to have electoral reforms?
Exactly.
No, but you see, the point is, no, we don't mind it, but you see, the point would be, you must not put the so-called proposals in such a manner that is clearly intended to ensure we don't have elections on the 17th of October. You see, we are yet even to see the nature of their demands being crystallized into proposals of legal changes. They were just saying, hey, remove this person. Surely, even if you remove all the commissioners, is there a guarantee the new commissioners who are going to come in, they are going to do elections strictly in adherence to the law? And again, between now and 17th of October, do we have even 10? What about the cost implication? Why is that not taking that into account?
I want us to bring in the radio first before we come back here, just to find out what the public is saying regarding our discussion today, and of course they will pose some questions to you. Over to you now, Bonnie, to give us feedback from the public.
Kutoka hapo katika studio, na kwa kweli naona pia hapa msikilizaji na mtazamaji anaendelea pia kutoa miale ya moto. Nataka nisome tu maoni jinsi yalivyo kwanza katika mtandao wa Twitter kwa @KBC Channel 1, @KBC Radio Taifa na @Boni Musambi. Godfrey Odhiambo Sirima anasema yuko Kampala, Uganda kule. Anasema mimi Boni, kwa kweli naona IEBC iko tayari, lakini wanasiasa wana demands tumbi nzima. That politicians hao ndio wanaleta demands za kuchanganya IEBC. Na hapo ndo ningependa tuzungumze na wewe msikilizaji na mtazamaji. Do you think pande zote mbili zina demands ambazo zinachanganya IEBC? Mara IEBC inasema hapa kuna kikundi ambacho kitaongoza mradi wa marudio ya uchaguzi wa urais. Jubilee wanajitokeza na kusema hao tumekataa. NASA nao wanasema hakuna kwenda uchaguzini tarehe 17 bila fulani na fulani kutolewa. Sasa kuna jamaa anahisi kutoka kule Kampala, Uganda, bali Mkenya, kwamba hizo demands ndizo zinaharibu mambo ya uchaguzi. Do you think kuna ukweli hapo? Sema nami kupitia 0700176699. Wacha tusikie moja kwa moja. Habari yako?
Radio Taifa, yes, ni Msambi.
Yes sir, unaitwa nani?
Naitwa Charles Kering kutoka sehemu za Nandi.
Unadhani pande zote mbili zina masharti mengi kupita kiasi?
Naona sio pande zote wako na masharti. Naona pande ya NASA ndio wako na masharti nyingi sana Boni Msambi. Yes, so na tena naona IBC wako tayari kwa uchaguzi.
Na nikuulize ndugu yangu.
Wako tayari? Yes. Naona tarehe 17 waliweka wakiwa kwa tayari. Haya, na vile sasa wanaendelea kufanya maandalizi, wanaona wana arrange classical polling stations, wanaanza kuandaa masanduku ya kupigia kura. So naona IBC wako tayari kufanya uchaguzi msasa.
Naomba nikuulize swali ndugu yangu.
Yes, uniulize ndugu yangu.
Yale masharti yanayowekwa na NASA.
Yes.
Kwako wewe ni masharti yenye haki au ni masharti ya kuharibu?
Naona ni masharti ya kutotaka election ifanyike vile ninavyoona.
Haya, asante kwa maoni yako ndugu yangu. Hello Radio Taifa.
Radio Taifa, hello.
Yes, naongea na nani?
Unaongea na Josh kutoka Nyamira.
Unadhani pande zote mbili zina masharti mengi kupita kiasi wewe?
Mimi nasema hizi pande zote siache IBC fanye kazi yao. Wache wanasiasa waanze kuchochea IBC. Wafanye kazi yao vile wanataka.
Haya, asante. Tusikie wa mwisho. Hello Radio Taifa.
Hello.
Yes, habari yako?
Nzuri sana.
Naongea na nani?
Naongea na Madungu kutoka Kariobangi.
Maoni yako ndugu yangu ukiwa Kariobangi?
Habari za hapo?
Salama sana.
Sasa maoni yangu ni kwamba Rais ameshatangaza kwamba wakikoma kushiriki uchaguzi yeye atapiga tu kwa rais. Kwa hiyo upinzani tatizo jambo lote.
Aha, kwa hiyo kulingana na huyu bwana NASA wana masharti mengi kulingana na vile anavyozungumza. Kidogo tu nisome mawili matatu hapa. J Kisila anasema IBC wakipewa time bila confusion they will deliver. Huyo ni J Kisila katika Twitter. Kuna Musalia Kiringa anasema ya kwamba IBC is not prepared. Hata tutaki waongoze uchaguzi huu ambao unakuja. Kazungu Karisa Kombe anasema ya kwamba anafurahishwa na mjadala lakini anaona IEBC haitaweza. Sasa nataka nirudi kwenu hapo katika studio Catherine na wenzako, na mimi hamtarudi tena upande wangu. Kwa hivyo naomba nikuulize swali hapo wakili Sifuna. NASA wamesema kwamba hakutakuwa na uchaguzi ikiwa masharti waliotoa hayatatimizwa. Je, ikiwa hayatatimizwa, mnaposema hakutakuwa na uchaguzi mnamaanisha mtafanya nini? Kama unaweza fafanua hilo Sifuna kwa Kiswahili tafadhali.
Sidhani kama tunaweza kuelezana ni vipi tutafanya kuzuia uchaguzi. Tumesema hakutakuwepo na uchaguzi kwa sababu hatutakushiriki uchaguzi, hakutakuwepo na uchaguzi wa kushiriki. Kwa hivyo sisi tunatarajia kwamba masuala ambayo tumesema, na wasikilizaji wengi labda wanakosea, wanasema tuna masharti mengi. Masharti ambayo tumeweka ni mawili peke yake, kwamba wale maafisa ambao walihusika katika huu wizi wa kura wakae kando, tupatie Wakenya wengine nafasi waweze kuendesha uchaguzi wa huru na haki. Jambo la pili ni kwamba zile kampuni ambazo zilihusika kupatia IBC teknolojia na zile ballot papers zisonge kando, wengine tupate nafasi kudili na kampuni ambazo zitasaidia Kenya, IBC na Wakenya kwa ujumla wawe na uchaguzi wa huru na haki. Hayo sio masharti mengi.
But even, just picking up from what they've said, I want to throw it over to you. We've seen IBC attempting to have a meeting with NASA and Jubilee. We have not seen this succeeding. I mean, based on this, do you really think there is political goodwill, or this is more of, games to make sure that time passes, then they precipitate a political crisis?
Well, I think we should examine the environment we are in. It's highly adversarial right now than it was before, on account of the fact that the nullification was, it was accepted to the extent that every party now, in fact, every Kenyan was ordered to go back to the polls. So the order really affected every Kenyan. But you see, it is because of that nullification that one side complains that the nullification was not justified. The other side confirms that the nullification was justified, but certain things need to take place for it to move again to the electoral process. Meaning that even if the discourse with IBC, the discourse will be in the nature of filing and pressuring the complaint, so that then there's an acquiescence to the extent that those people that are said not to be there, having conducted the bungled election, if I have to put it that way, before, that then the changes ought to be there. And for me, I do think that adversarial system that we have in everything we do, including the electoral process, is inconsistent with the spirit of the Constitution, to the extent that this is an institution that independence, and will be that everybody will respect that independence, and whatever they say will be followed. But you see, the problem is there are no real punitive. You see, court is different. It's said to be independent. Well, we say it's independent, but if you do not follow what it says, there will be implications. So if you don't follow what IBC directs you to do, come, we have this meeting, and you don't come, what can IBC do? Well, so the point is, there's nothing coercive that IBC can do now to compel people to come for meetings or to follow its instruction, except that on the day that it pronounces to be the election day, that's the day that you ought to come and cast your ballot as a Kenyan, and then obviously the implication will be the outcome. That's the much that
our time is running up. I want to hear from the two gentlemen. Why is it that NASA has refused to meet with Jubilee and IBC?
Catherine, first of all, I really want to encourage you as a media practitioner to move away from this trap of creating a false equivalence between these two sides. The record is clear, and you work in a media house, you can play these clips. We actually showed up for the meeting with the IBC. The
So
people who did not show up
at different times.
Exactly, because a time was appointed. We showed up at the appointed hour. The people who did not show up at the appointed hour, you should be able to say Jubilee are not interested in meetings. So don't create this false equivalence like there is a problem on both sides. The problem is with the government. The problem is with Jubilee. We want to assure the country that we are ready for an election, but it doesn't make any sense for you to fall into a trap and insist on using the same path the same day. You must take remedial action. What lessons are you going to draw from the Supreme Court if you're not going to make changes for you to ensure that if Uhuru Kenyatta is declared winner again, and the court says there is no fault on his part, you don't want that victory to be messed up with because of fault on the part of a third party.
No,
so let's have a commission, an IEBC that can actually conduct elections, that whenever that election is subjected to any test, whether it is in the Supreme Court or in the Court of a Public Opinion, then it will pass a test of a free and fair election. But until then, there is a little article of the Constitution that people ignore. All this sovereign power that is exercised on our behalf by the likes of Mheshimiwa Irungu Kang'ata, even the President of the Republic and the judiciary, the Constitution leaves the door open under Article 2 for us to exercise that sovereignty. Kenyans can execute the mandate of all constitutional officers.
There is no way a party can say that it is ready for an election and then it demands that we have a new party that is going to print the new ballot boxes. Because do you know what will happen? If at all IBC was to accede to that demand, they are going to initiate procuring a new entity. Do you know the procedures of procuring a new entity? Advertisement. After you do advertisement, people come and tender. When they tender, if there is a problem, you take it, I don't know to which board, then there is an appeal. That takes a procurement, particularly in such kind of a big contract. It takes about 6 months.
So the challenge here is the timing.
If you try to do what we call direct procurement,
which they did,
a person will go to court.
Which they did in this particular instance.
To make his point.
A person will go to court, and by the way, they did challenge in court. So the point is, it is impossible. It is impossible to have an election on time if at all you insist you have a new printer, unless for sure you do not want to do an election. And that is the point we're trying to illustrate. These people are not ready. No wonder, by the way, look at the places they are going to
remarks because our time is up. 30 seconds.
No.
Since our Kenyans were talking.
You make your closing remarks.
No, my point is, look at the places these guys, they usually go to campaign.
Like today,
we go to Kibera. Thank you. See, we were in Nairobi. You see, they are always rotating in Nairobi. So they get constituents. No, they rotate in Nairobi. Voters are here. They rotate in Nairobi because they know very well. They're interested in what is happening here in capital city. They don't go to Mashinani. Our political support.
We were in Bungoma yesterday.
Our political support is in the rural areas. That is where we get a bulk of our support. And that is why these people, after when we win, they're always asking what happened. And finally, ask yourself, how come these guys don't deploy agents? If these guys have agents in each and every polling center, there'll be no need for them to catch you. We will catch you. Exactly. But they don't deploy. They don't deploy even a single agent. They meet in Nairobi. I don't know, surely. And then
I have nothing to say other than the fact that the responsibility to conduct credible free elections will never move from the IEBC to the petitioner or to the parties involved in an election. So whether or not you have agents, the absence of agents in Nyeri is not a free pass for you to steal elections. I mean,
I think the sum total of it all. I think the sum total of it all is the decision of the determination of the full text of the judgment of the Supreme Court will give us a direction on how we proceed. And probably it will be praising IEBC with a few anomalies here and there. And therefore that would be much that would be much of this grandstanding. But ultimately, I do think that once we get by Tuesday the determination, I think some of these issues will be put to rest, or otherwise they'll be heightened. And probably there's a lot of concession from the Jubilee side, and we hope that we can hold our elections as 85% of Kenyans are saying on 17th of October.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Unfortunately, our time is up, but I do appreciate you coming to studio and, of course, sharing some of these insights with the Kenyan people. Well, I have been talking to George Kithi, our resident analyst. We've also been talking to Edwin Sifuna from the NASA coalition, as well as Honorable Irungu Kang'ata, who is the Murang'a senator, as well as the deputy majority whip in the Senate. Just putting into perspective some of the issues surrounding the preparedness of IEBC to conduct the October 17th poll, and of course NASA saying that it will not allow IEBC to conduct the fresh presidential election without some reforms within the electoral system, and of course Jubilee saying that IEBC is independent and should be allowed to do its work. Well, the final verdict will be out this week. We expect that the judges at the Supreme Court will give the final judgment this week, and of course we will keep you up to speed on exactly what is contained in that particular judgment and whether indeed we are going to see changes happening. That marks the end of Frontline tonight. As always, thank you, Kenya, for watching. My name is Catherine Achieng'a. We did have Bonnie Musambi on the radio side getting feedback from the public, so we do appreciate you also interacting with us. We end it here tonight, but stay tuned for Channel 1 News Hour. You will get more details of what's happening in the world of news with John Jacob Curia. Bye for now.